Welcome to Talking Early Years, a showcase training podcast with Ellen Roberts
and Gemma Carr.
Hello and welcome to today's Talking Early Years podcast. This is our 8th episode in our Safeguarding Shorts series. So in this episode, we're going to be discussing modern slavery and what this means to us as practitioners. So let's dive on in. Ellen, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Gemma. How are you?
Good. Yes, good, thank you. Good. Yeah. So Ellen, talk to me a little bit about this. What is modern slavery? What does this mean?
So modern slavery is a part of safeguarding. It's a form of abuse where people, mainly children or vulnerable adults, are exploited. So we're talking about things like human trafficking, forced labour, debt bondage, which actually related quite well to our county lines and child criminal exploitation we explored in our last Safeguarding Short. We're talking about things like domestic servitude and child slavery as well. It is highly illegal in the UK, but it does happen worldwide in an international world now where travel links are better than ever. It is inevitable that it happens everywhere. Victims of modern slavery often have no freedom and suffer great physical and mental abuse. So it is a big part of safeguarding that is often overlooked. I find most people don't really think about it or consider it as something that they need to be aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. So is there any legislation around it? Is there anything that you say it's illegal? So what are the laws behind this?
Absolutely. So it often involves organised crime and networks of criminals. And as a result, the main legislation around it is the Modern Slavery Act of 2015. It makes slavery, servitude, forced or compulsory labour and human trafficking illegal in the UK, and there are really tough sentences as well, so you can be imprisoned for up to life for any of those offences. It also requires large businesses, so businesses with a turnover of £36 million or more a year, to report on what they do to prevent modern slavery in their supply chains. So sometimes if you scroll down to the bottom of large company websites, you'll have the contact us, FAQs, those kind of sections, and they'll have a modern slavery statement or modern slavery policy. So you're talking about places like Co-op or large organizations like Aldi, Coca-Cola. All these big organizations are required to have a statement on how they control it within their supply chains, not just within their own workforce. And then other legislation includes things like employment law and safeguarding laws such as minimum wage, the working time directives, and we have in the UK as well something called the Independent Anti-Slavery Commissioner, who works in the UK to oversee and respond to modern slavery victims and perpetrators, and they oversee it to look at what we can do to further protect people.
So how does it affect us in our everyday? What are some things that we need to see, be aware of, be able to highlight?
It can be really difficult to see it in day to day, especially as we're going about. It is naturally something that people try to conceal, either as people that are perpetrators, but also victims can feel ashamed of being a victim or under such control that they do not want anybody else to know for fear of what it might do to them or their families. And because of that, some things that we buy or use may be as a result of exploitative labour or forced labour, such as fast fashion, cheap clothes, cheap food, that kind of thing. So common places in the UK that we see modern slavery are things like car washes, nail salons, and especially in agriculture, things like food processing, food picking, that kind of thing. We see it in construction quite often and in domestic servitude. Quite often, victims might not realise what their rights are in the UK, or indeed have enough English to actually communicate any concerns. So we've got to be their eyes and ears.
I personally have not experienced it, seen anything. However, I think it's very important to be made aware that it is very present in our country. This isn't something that is only done abroad or in places that we don't see of, and kind of like you say, sort of those factories or kind of those examples you've given. There is actually, in the UK, there is over 19,000 potential victims of modern slavery. So that's the highest number of referrals since the record began in 2009. So that is a big number. And 31% of all of those were children. So that is about 6,000 potential child victims.
That many.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And 23% of people referred were British nationals as well.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting as well, because we kind of assume that everybody knows their rights, knows what they're expected to do and have in employment, or indeed we expect employers to know as well. Quite often I've seen it where people are offered lower than minimum wage.
Yeah.
So I saw it only a couple of months ago, funnily enough, for a local pub. They were offering a delivery service for their food, and they were offering the delivery drivers £10 an hour, which was below minimum wage, and didn't realise that that's not allowed, that's illegal in the UK, and as a result that would be classed as modern slavery. So it's sometimes just born out of ignorance, but largely born out of organised crime. In terms of indicators to look out for, as we mentioned, there's quite a number of places that are commonplace for modern slavery, like car washes, nail salons, agriculture, etc. And the things we're kind of looking out for are things like those living and working conditions. For example, working really long hours, little or no pay, living in cramped and poor conditions. It could be that they're working with really poor conditions and they're not dressed appropriately for the job that they're doing, not given the PPE that they require. They may have obvious signs of physical abuse and poor health, or it might be that someone looks like they're being controlled or are avoiding eye contact or any interactions. It is often also accompanied by a complete lack of freedom. So they are not allowed to seemingly speak freely with other people or travel alone. And then often, as we've mentioned, not aware of the rights, or are unable to speak the local language to be able to understand their rights, which is quite a key thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So is it a case that sort of we would see this with children, or would we see this more with adults? Who we like, working in early years, who are we likely to see this with? Who should we sort of be heightened to?
We can see it with anybody. So it may be children in our care, it could be colleagues, and it could be the parents and carers of the children, or it could just be in your wider community as well. As practitioners, we have a wider social responsibility in general, just as citizens, especially in the UK, to look out for one another. And if we are concerned, we need to report it. We do have a moral obligation as well as individuals in the UK to look out for things like fast fashion and cheap fashion, and bear in mind the origin and source of where things might come from. So there's certain clothing companies out there, for example, that you might want to question the ethics behind what they do. In terms of fruit and vegetable, for example, we're in the summer right now, and quite often fruit picking in the UK is a very seasonal job, and it will be outsourced to foreign nationals that are looking for seasonal work in the UK for a short term. And that is a very commonplace example of where modern slavery could occur. It doesn't absolutely mean that every single example is modern slavery, but absolutely not. And it doesn't always mean that those jobs are only for foreign nationals, but absolutely not at all. However, it is something to be looking out for and considering when you're driving past. Are they being treated respectfully? Are we seeing what we are expecting to see in our society that is fair and just and respectful to one another? Are we witnessing that people are being treated in the way that we would expect? And I think that, for me, for safeguarding, is the paramount thing. Are we looking for starters? Are we looking out for these things? But second of all, are we seeing what we want to see, or are we just ignoring poor behaviour or poor practice in any capacity?
Absolutely. So if we were to see anything or kind of be made aware of things like that, what would we do? Where should we be going? Where can we report this to?
Hmm. Immediate concerns directly to the police. So
Mhm.
I think if you have an immediate concern of harm, dial 999 straight away, report it directly to the police. If you think there may be a concern and you're not entirely sure, you could call 101 or perhaps contact your local police station or police authority. You can often report it online as well now. So if
Okay.
it's not an immediate concern, but something's flagged to you and you think, "Oh, I don't really want to sit on this, I want to talk to
Mhm.
somebody,"
Mhm.
those are two of the main key options
Mhm.
there. There's also a modern slavery helpline, which is 08000 121 700,
Mhm.
and that is specifically for modern slavery. So if you are absolutely sure and you think, right, this is a concern, you can contact them directly. Recently, another example that we've had in our area, we live by the sea, and a few people were walking down the seafront one night and they noticed quite a large group of adults and children picking cockles off of the beach. And they thought, oh, that looks a bit
Mm.
strange. Usually, you come down to pick a couple of shells maybe, but not,
Yeah.
with big buckets and things.
Mm.
And it was a large group from China, and it was a large group of cockle pickers. And the person that reported it had actually put it on Facebook and said, this looks really strange.
Yeah.
What is this? Is this even
Mm.
allowed? Like, are you
Mm.
allowed to take that much
Mm.
from the seafront?
Mm.
And really was putting it on there as an environmental concern because,
Yeah.
usually you shouldn't really take too much from your local
Mm.
environment, and especially sea creatures and sea
Mm.
animals.
Mm.
And it was somebody that said that seems like it could be cockle picking in an illegal sense and a modern slavery
Wow.
issue. So reported it then to the police, and we
Mhm.
saw it in the newspapers a couple of weeks later that it was actually an organised crime issue,
Wow.
and it was people trafficked over to cockle pick off the seafront. So it was
Yeah.
such a strange occurrence because you just
Mm.
wouldn't ordinarily see that. You don't think it's ever going to happen on your doorstep, especially we're, in quite a nice area by the seaside as well.
Mm.
It's
Mm.
not usual that you would get that level of crime. So again, it was somebody seeing something a little bit odd,
Yeah.
asking for a little bit of advice,
Mm.
and it actually went down a completely different pathway
Yeah.
than potentially they thought it would. So
And if you were to see that, you might see it as quite like an innocent task that they were doing,
yeah.
or they're
Hmm.
just you might just think, oh, it's a
Absolutely.
family out, picking or
Yeah.
whatever, and you may not think anything. For me, it would just be a bit bizarre that they were doing, at night time and all those sorts of
Yeah,
things.
you'd
That's
think,
what
oh, I
kind of
wonder
would
what they're
flag up.
doing,
That's a bit bizarre.
Yeah, absolutely. You would never really look at that and you think, something
Mm.
nefarious is going on. But
Mm.
for them, it was the large number. There were about 30 in the group, which
Wow.
if there were only sort of 5, 6, 7, you
Yeah.
would probably think, oh, it's just a family.
Yeah.
And, it could well be,
Mm.
absolutely.
Mm.
But again, it's looking and thinking, is that normal? Is that right? And who could
Mm.
I perhaps
Mm.
just have a chat
Mm.
about that with?
I think, like we always say with safeguarding, it's that funny feeling in your tummy, isn't it? Something just not sitting
Absolutely.
quite right, isn't it?
Mm,
It's
hmm.
playing on my mind. I'm not okay with it. That's when we should be acting on it, isn't it? And that's the same
Exactly.
in these situations, isn't it?
Absolutely. Anything that you're not quite sure, just have a
Mm,
chat with somebody.
absolutely. So thank you very much for tuning in today. As always, safeguarding is a big topic, and if you have any concerns, you can reach out to your settings designated safeguarding lead or to Showcase Training Safeguarding Lead, which is Ellen, or directly to Mash and Lado.
Don't forget to like, share, and follow our podcast to stay updated. And as always, let's keep the conversation about early years going. Until next time, take care and keep making a difference.